So I will be talking about standards and more like technical things. So I hope we really can all follow. So the problem is actually the token standards that we have are broken. And especially ERC-71, which literally is what all of this is about, right? So we have here an NFT conference and everybody talks about token, and most of them actually are built on 721. And the reason probably why I can say that is because I created that token that came before ERC-71, which was ERC-20, which then became 721 because it's just a modification on that initial standard. So over the last few years, thinking about identity actually a lot, and also thinking about how to redo this right and how to kind of get a clean slate to make it right. And the big question is like it all works, right? We're using blockchain and there's NFTs being sold here. Like, how can you say this is broken? Let's talk about first in general tokens, which is not necessarily NFTs. The biggest problem actually we have is that tokens right now don't really have proper metadata. The only thing we have in a smart contract that represents a token is a symbol and a name. There's no additional metadata. So if you, for example, want to know about like how a token looks like and so on, you probably have to look in the internet somewhere. But what if we could add even more things, right? Like we could reference a website, we could reference an issue, or we could reference icons and all kind of other things. That would make it far more interesting. Because these tokens would be easily readable from a smart contract level, right? We don't have that. So we have name and symbol. That's what we put in ERC-20. That's what literally all the other tokens also went with. When it comes to 721, right, metadata is a bit more important because you're creating NFTs, and NFTs is like, pictures that you're selling, mostly, right now at least. The problem is that the token standard, or the metadata standard of that standard is extremely bad. So you have a token URI function that literally gives you a URI. And if that URL is IPFS somewhere, hopefully Pinata is still online, so if not, you have to use another IPFS provider. Here you have a hash, right? This orange thing is actually the file's signature. So you can reference the file itself. But what if somebody puts it on Google Drive, right? And that actually happens. So now you have an NFT where the metadata could be altered and you wouldn't even know when and how and by whom, right? So we have no really good way of referencing these metadata, and they're also very restricted because it's just one URL. The third problem we have is we have no generic way to call other smart contracts, and that's actually a big issue. So it's a simple thing. When you have an ERC-20 or whatever transfer, you call a transfer, and there's no way another smart contract would ever know that it received a token, because what the token smart contract does, it just updates the balance on its own contract. So the other smart contract never knows about that. And there's a way around that, and we basically came up with this concept back then in 2015 called a proof and transfer from. So basically, what you can do is you can make this call, you can send a token, or you can basically approve a smart contract, for example, a DEX, for a certain amount, and then you can call the DEX smart contract, which then calls the token contract and says, oh, now I have a balance, I can pull my balance in. And that's how the DEX knows that he has a certain amount, right? That's very cumbersome because it actually takes 2 transactions and it's quite complicated. So over the years, there were other token contracts that came up with their own ways of solving this. These are actually all iterations on top of ERC-20, 223, 721 made a little change in 777, and they said, oh, awesome, we just implement this function in the smart contract that's called, right? And we just try to call this. So every time you do a transfer, we try to call that token receive function. Problem is, each standard has their own name, right? So one calls it tokens received, the other calls it token received. ERC-71 calls it ERC-71 on token received. So now we have a problem, right? If you're at a decentralized exchange and you want to be able to receive a lot of tokens, yet now you need to implement all of these different functions, right? So what about the future, right? What about you deployed your smart contract, the DEX is running, and somebody else comes from a new standard, right? Now you're out of luck. So it's very easy. So just to summarize this, so we have no proper metadata in tokens itself. We have pretty bad metadata when it comes to NFTs, and we have no generic way to call out the smart contracts. So what we did is we just kind of like erased all the stuff, and we kind of said, okay, let's not necessarily try to be backwards compatible, let's do it right. And we created something called LSP7 and LSP8. LSP what? So LSP is actually Lukso standard proposal. So, so the thing is, I created that term Ethereum request for comment, ERC, back in 2015, because there was this RFC process in the web, and I thought like, okay, let's just call it ERC. Let's have some discussion and then actually create real standards. The ERC name became the standard itself, so that's why ERC20 is a very known name. And here, I just do it different. I thought, okay, let's call it standard proposal right from the start because there's no discussion, and then it's called LSP. And it's also in the LIPS repository, which is the Lukso improvement proposals. So what we did basically with these two standards, because a token and an NFT is very similar, the only real difference you have is this, that one is transferring an amount and the other is transferring an ID, right? With an NFT, I can have a unique version, I can have a unique ID that I transfer, but with the other, just transfer amounts. But literally they are the same. So what we did is we leveled them out on a standards level that are almost exactly the same. And we have to add some extra function like token IDs off, so you actually have the ability to see all the IDs that you own as a person. We also added the Force from Star Wars. Very important. But I will talk about this in a bit. And we also added transfer batching, so that's kind of like the same like ERC 1155, we can transfer lots of like IDs at the same time. That's very important when you do more large quantities, especially when you have an NFT with a token ID, right? Transferring a lot of token IDs is very costly on chain, so having a batch is important too. The big thing with the metadata is basically solved because we use something called ERC 75. And ERC 75 is, do I still have time? Wow, this is, okay, then I have to be, what?
Do we want to give him more time? Whoa! How much more time should we give him? All afternoon. Okay, they love you. Okay, where's my time person? Give him as much time as he needs.
All right, good. I'm still fast. Okay, I'm still quick here. So basically, ERC 75 is a standard I proposed in 2017, and it's already old actually by that. And it's actually a very simple standard, and it's two standards at the same time. One is for a key value store that you can change, so it has this like get data and set data, and one is a generic execute function. And both of them actually are very useful for profiles, but they're also very useful for metadata in an NFT. Because now if I use 75Y, I can actually have unlimited amount of different data I could add to my NFT, which is not just a reference to a JSON file, but I could also reference, obviously, you know, token name and token symbol. I could also reference different type of protocols that are maybe relating to an NFT. So making this NFT upgradable, changeable over time, but based on smart contract logic and not just some JSON file sitting somewhere. The token standards actually go a bit more deep, and there's actually 3 type of NFT types you can now create. But you can reference, for example, a JSON file, but you could also have another metadata smart contract per singular ID. So now you can have very unique NFTs. Think of like for example, a soccer card, a player card that actually alters over time because some football league can update its balance on the players, like score or whatever, right? So you can make really complex things where every party that's relevant controls the right piece automatically. And that's a really important piece. It looks very gibberish, but the point is, this is how we store JSON files. They're all stored by definition with the hash function and the hash and the encoded URL. So now you can actually store your files on Google Drive, but there is a hash that's referencing it. So if the Google Drive doesn't give you back the same file anymore with the same hash, you obviously got the wrong thing. So now it's by design hash referenced. Very important is the universal receiver, because that really solves a lot of these automation problems on like calling out of smart contracts. Because if, for example, we can now have an exchange that implements just one function called the universal receiver. We can have a type ID now based on whatever asset standards that can be a different ID, and you can pass along some data. We, for example, have for LSP7 and LSP8 different kind of type IDs. And anybody who can create a new asset, could add a new kind of type ID. And your DEX could have an upgradable part and being able to act to any kind of future assets and like somehow like reject them, move them, or does whatever. Let's talk about the force. In that Lukso universe and in this standards universe, we all probably have heard about the fact that people lost a bunch of crypto, right? Because they're sending it to the wrong address. I guess, that's a big fear why nobody touches their MetaMask. The problem really is that if you just can send anywhere tokens, then people do lose stuff, right? So what we do here is we say LSP7 and 8, which is a token or an NFT, can only be sent to a smart contract, and a smart contract has the universal receiver implemented and does not reject it. This way, you can only send it to contracts that actually are able to deal with this. You should actually not send assets anymore to plain keys. So that's the old world, sending it to plain keys. The new world is sending it to smart contracts. And you can obviously use the force if you really want to, and you could send it wherever you want, right? But that's more for the sophisticated pro users. But there's a very big standard missing, and that's the most important one in the whole blockchain space right now, and has been for over the last years, and that's exactly why we are, where we are. And that's also what's holding back blockchain adoption, and it's killing the UX that we have in blockchain in general, because we store everything on keys, right? And storing everything on keys is literally the worst thing you can do. Because now you store everything on a password that now you have to remember for your life long, right? And hopefully never your friend ever get like aware of it, because then like all your stuff is gone. So you could never build an identity on top of this, right? Building an identity on top of a password you can't never forget, bad idea, or can never be shared. So that's where smart contract accounts come into play. And they have a lot of opportunities, and I feel like the pressure of time here. So upgradable security is very important, right? That makes you more comfortable using stuff. Not making your users pay for gas, very important, because your usual experience right now is, hey, get MetaMask, remember 12 words, go to an exchange, get some Ether, and then do something, right? This is like the easiest user experience ever. That's what we all want to have. And also, we want changeable information on an account. We want to react to incoming assets so we can actually know what we get and we maybe can reject it. And we also want this to be long-lasting because we want to gain reputation on top of these accounts. And that's what ES725 account solves. And it solves it on a standard-based level. And we call them, in combination with a few other smart contract, universal profiles. And that's the new thing. And our community is super great. They're making some amazing artwork. That was actually done by Alts Anonymous, I guess, if I get it right. And 725 up, right? Universal profile, you get it. So, in technical, this is a smart contract that you have. That's now your relevant address. That's the thing that you're actually going to use. So if you are an artist or a brand, or even a normal user, and you now have an address, an account that's actually referenceable, and it can do the same thing like any key can do. So it can own assets, it can transfer assets, it can interact with other smart contracts, it can be part of a DAO if you want to, and it obviously can create NFTs, all kind of things, right? Very important. So now you start to gain reputation on something that you can actually manage properly. There is a key manager, and the key manager can have one key, but the key manager can also have multiple keys or multiple devices like mobile phone or computer or whatsoever. And you can also accept the relay service. So if you're Camel, right, you can send it to the bear, and the bear can actually relay your transaction, pay for the gas, but you just signed the message. So that's now possible. So now we can have a full-on, basically, business world of relay services that like have whatever way of paying them for themselves, like watching ads or subscription to just pay for these kind of blockchain transaction fees. And really important is the universal receiver. We got to know about it before. If you have a universal profile, obviously a universal receiver makes sense because you want to be aware of any kind of future asset. So if we come up with, LSP 200,000, we obviously still want to be able to somehow act to this. So you can actually upgrade an external contract called the Universal Receiver Delegate that is able to now act on these assets. And it can obviously just reject and allow assets, but even more important, it can actually write the assets into your profile that you ever received. And having that allows you to actually re-establish your profile completely from the smart contract, being able to literally list all the assets you have information, have something that looks like something, like a real profile, even though we're having here the glitch. It's the metaverse, so there's a glitch here, right? It's the matrix trying to prevent us. Okay, let me really quick finish this now. So basically, it's very cool, very expensive. That's exactly why we're going to make a new blockchain. It's actually the next level blockchain because it's a... just 3 more slides and then done. Yeah, really true. So basically... All right, so basically just EVM blockchain. It's basically a blockchain built on the Casper FFC consensus. That's the one Ethereum 2 is using as well. And we have nicely built that in a triangle system. And that's also an artwork from our community. So basically we have Vanguard, which is a consensus chain. We have Pandora, which is a smart contract execution chain. And there's the Lukso orchestrator that synchronizes the two. And it basically creates a single sharded blockchain that can be later multi-sharded. And that's currently running in the testnet, which you can actually join now. And so we have all of these creative people, and that's the whole point is we want to create this blockchain for these new creative economy, how we call it. And we think like NFTs 2.0, culture, currencies, blockchain-based social media will be the probably next big wave of where blockchain will be used. Obviously the metaverse, that means gaming and all of these kind of things. Creating this new creative economy that we think will be the next use case for blockchain. So, and if you want to participate, there's an announcement. We will do a developer announcement in the Edison, I think it's not the Edison ballroom, it's some other room. It's the blockchain community room, chandelier room or something. And you can also run a node. You just go to luxo.tech, docs.luxo.tech, you can run a node, and you can join our Discord if you want to, and you can follow this all along. And yeah, there's also already a token for that. You go figure it out. Thanks, guys.
Who thought that was the best talk today? Congrats. No, congrats. Thank you. That was amazing. But don't go yet. In the history of NFT NYC, I don't think we've ever had an audience say they want more. It's like encore, right? Give them a bow. Thank you very much. This particular audience is really engaged. This gentleman at the front said he thought you were a visionary.
We're here because of him.
Yeah, we're here because of you. Woohoo! Thank you very much. It's a privilege for us to have you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the time.
It's a pleasure. No, it's a pleasure. Are you guys engineers? Yes, you're an engineer? No. Okay. Why was he so great? What can I learn from him for our next event?
Do you know what the code is?
So I'm Jody Rich, everyone. This gentleman at the front said, do I know what an ERC 720 token is? Yes, I do. So thank you very much. It was really great.